Harry and Meghan were shackled. Every night they scoured the internet to read the newspaper reports and the trolls posting on social media. Irrationally, they grouped the two together and fed each other's frenzy about the media. This is so true. You read an article in the newspaper, all right, that's great. But then if the social media trolls are, chomping at the bit to say their next negative thing, you can't conflate the two, right? Just because somebody on social media decided to say something off color or racist doesn't mean that the article that you didn't think was glowing enough also has undertones of racism. Just because somebody on social media said something that had undertones or was overtly racist. These are two very different mediums, right? So, but to them it didn't matter. It all had the same foundation. All of these were public words, which meant they were all the same thing. Convinced that as champions of goodness, they were being persecuted by mendacity and racism, they felt victimized by the mildest criticism. The British press, Harry later said, was destroying my mental health. I thought, this is toxic. He might as well have just said, I am a robot. Because everything he says is so programmed now. Programmed by Meghan. Harry's instability fed Meghan's fears that friends were leaking stories to the media. I know exactly who is to blame for all of these things, and that would be Victoria Beckham, okay? Because I've shared a few things with her, and she just cannot be trusted. And Harry, you're going to need to go and deal with her husband, and man to man, okay? Because if you're going to be my husband, you're going to have to protect me, all right? I am a strong woman of color, all right? But I still think that you need to go and deal with this man to man. All right. I'm washing my hands of Victoria, but she does need to know that it was wrong. So once a prince, but now a henchman, Harry totters off over to David Beckham and's like, mate, I got something to say. You and my wife can't be friends anymore because your wife's the worst. I think she's leaking things. Well, me and Meghan, we both think that. We actually know it. Right, because Meghan said some things to Victoria, and then it was in the media, and we read stories, right? So you're gonna need to tell your girl to step off, all right? So David Beckham was like, okay, well, you're nuts. And his truthful denials damaged their relationship. So he wasn't going to have any of it. He was not here for any more of Harry's lectures about how his wife should or shouldn't be treated and how everyone was against her. And their relationship broke down. I mean, yet one more relationship that's just in the gutter. The result their staff saw further aggravated their relations with the royal family. Just as in Australia, the Sussexes convinced themselves that their stardom in South Africa was underappreciated by Buckingham Palace. Their loyalty was being exploited. Having broken with her family, Meghan persuaded Harry to consider doing the same. At the same time, she poured out her anger to her Los Angeles advisors about the dark forces at work. Palace officials were briefing against them. They were being held back by Charles and Williams. They deserved better. Back came the reassurance that global recognition and her fame and fortune were guaranteed when she returned to America. So you just make sure you get back on these shores, girl, okay? We'll take care of you. Just come on home, baby. Just come on home. But first, she needed to set the scene for her return because the gentle illusion of the benign Sussexes did not match their hunger for revenge against newspapers. So the word from America was, look, we want you home, okay, baby girl? We want you home. But look, you look a little bit like a nightmare, all right? We want gentle Sussex here, all right? And you guys are gearing up for a showdown with the Daily Mirror and the Sun. And, let's just kind of get that going. Let's get that finished up, okay? And then, baby girl, you can come on home, all right? Come back to mama. Harry was in the final stages of setting his claim against the Daily Mirror and the Sun newspapers for hacking his phone. That success, he believed, would be followed by another victory against the Mail on Sunday. He had complained to IPSO, the press standard watchdog, about an expose of alleged dishonesty in a series of wildlife photographs. Okay, y'all, let's just have a little talk about how dumb Harry is, okay? Harry cannot figure out what is and is not worth taking to court, right? So he is all angry because he had posted some pictures on Instagram showing him dangerously close to a bunch of wild elephants. And people had called BS on this because, as it turned out, this shot that he had meant to convey his bravery and what a hero of the wildlife he was. I mean, like, the elephants loved him so much he was able to get this close. In reality, the picture had been cropped. Those elephants were in shackles. They couldn't have come any near him than he was to them. Well, when that was pointed out, he became really enraged and said that they were trying to undermine him and that this newspaper was so evil because, why would they do that? And why would they say these things? And it's like, yeah, but you did do that, Harry. You did change the photograph so that you could appear to be braver than you were, and so that you could continue to highlight this idea of yourself as this sort of animal whisperer that, goes into Africa and has all this communing with the animals, and that, they wouldn't dare hurt you because you have some kind of ability to commune with nature. Like, that was the whole point of the post. So, but the shackles kind of lent an error to that whole post that he didn't want, so he cropped it out. Well, when that was pointed out, then he gets his feelings hurt. He gets all butt sore about the whole thing. So that comes out right before all the stuff with the Daily Mirror and the Sun. He'd been collecting and getting ready for his case, but it just made people feel like, what kind of case is he really going to bring if his idea of being injured is when somebody calls him because he cropped a photo to make himself look braver? Like, is this is the kind of stuff that he gets mad about? Well, during August, the Sussexes crossed a Rubicon. Until then, Gerard Tyrrell, the royal family's usual legal advisor, had led their threat of legal action against the Mail on Sunday for publishing Meghan's letter to her father, right? So they have already been litigious the last time, having to do with Meghan's letter. And they said that there wasn't any reason why the Mail on Sunday should have published excerpts from the letter, because it didn't matter how much the public was interested in it. Meghan had a private relationship with her father, so it should have remained private. And so for the Mail on Sunday to come out and, put their oar in, that was egregious, and they should be sued. Okay, but they don't have a leg to stand on. And that's the problem. I mean, this is such a weak case because previous to this, Meghan's friends had leaked a whole bunch of the letter to People magazine and done a whole profile on wonderful Meghan and, her terrible father who had done nothing but lie, and, he was a weird old man and he tried to drag her down even though she tried to help him so much, and he was always slapping the hand that was trying to help him. And here was Meghan, loving daughter, trying to help him through all his medical difficulties. Right? So we'd already gotten that. That had already gone out. Excerpts from the letter had already been paraphrased by friends. They're the ones who had introduced the concept of Meghan's relationship with her dad. They're the ones who brought that relationship to the public. So now for Meghan to turn around and be like, my relationship with my father is private and you guys can just butt right out. Well, then why did you get your friends to go and talk about your private relationship with your dad, right? So it was a really shoddy case. And they were going to need a really experienced lawyer to help them navigate what was going to be some really ugly water. As an experienced litigator, Tyrrell knew the risk of going to the next step and actually launching a legal action against the Mail on Sunday. Meghan would not only be exposed to cross-examination in the witness box, but she would be compelled before the trial to disclose embarrassing information, including every text and email to the 5 friends who spoke to People magazine, to Harry, and to her Kensington Palace staff. Her denial that she did not know that her friends were giving an interview to the magazine or would refer to her letter would be rigorously tested under cross-examination. She was not going to be able to stand up under this, and Gerard knew it, so he counseled against going to trial on this. There was also the distasteful spectacle of a courtroom battle with her father. I mean, can you imagine? Thomas Markle would have come out swinging, right? I mean, he's been fighting his own battle this whole time. He would have loved a chance to go to court and say his piece, and he would have had evidence that would have really hurt Meghan, right? And Gerard Tyrrell knew that, so he said, look, it's going to get ugly. It's going to be embarrassing. Like, we don't need the Jerry Springer show up in here, just like maybe let this one pass. Her claim that she'd repeatedly tried to contact her father after the wedding, which sadly went unanswered, was dangerous territory. She would also need to proof that she had tried to care for him in his financial and health difficulties. I mean, when had she ever offered any kind of help for his health issues, even though she loved to talk about it? Back in Spare, Harry was always talking about what a great person she was because she cared so much about her dad's health. And I always thought when I was reading it, at what point did you see her reaching out to her father about his health? Only thing we have about her father and his health and Meghan's inclusion in that was her denial that he was having a heart attack when he was having one. Similarly, her claim that she did protect him from the media intrusion before the wedding would be refuted. And while she fumed that the Mail on Sunday had published stories showing her in a false and damaging light, she did not intend to sue the newspaper for defamation. The whole case is befuddled. It could never have been successful, and Gerard knows that. So he is really trying to get them to pull their wits together and consider how damaging this really would be and how unwinnable the whole thing is. Discounting the dangers, Meghan wanted action, and she was dissatisfied with the lawyer who had been given to her by the palace. So she turns to her Los Angeles lawyers, who, of course, this is who they would suggest. She continues to go to the people who will give her the answers that she wants. Not the people who are going to guide her towards better success, but the people who are just going to be like, anything you want, babe, anything you want. So her Los Angeles lawyer suggested that she go with Keith Schilling, an aggressive London solicitor not previously employed by the royal family. And they said that he was an ideal warrior for the case. Now, Bauer paints us a grim picture of this individual. Shabbily dressed and speaking with traces of an East End lilt, Schilling was the antithesis of the Puka St. James lawyer. Loving a fight and charging high fees, Schilling and his staff boasted to potential clients about their successes. They rarely volunteered information about their failures. Okay, so this guy seems like the sort of person on a billboard, right? Had an accident? Encouraged by Schillings to expect victory against the Mail on Sunday, the Sussexes had decided, before they left London, to attack the newspaper. The timetable was set by Schilling. So they were going to let him be the deciding factor as to when this went to court. And you guys, this joker doesn't have any sense whatsoever. And he's certainly not functioning within the palace protocol. And he's not going to do anything that's going to help the palace. Unexpectedly, the solicitors emailed that the claim would be filed while they were in South Africa. Anxious palace officials asked the Sussexes not to ruin the tour. And to their horror, the Sussexes ignored their pleas. Their legal battle was launched in South Africa rather than in London. How could this have gone any positive way? This is going to go straight south, is what this is going to go. Posted on the Sussexes' official website, Harry's aggressive script denounced their enemies. Partly drafted by David Sherborne, a media-hating barrister regularly paraded in the spotlight, Harry's headline damned the press pack for relentless propaganda against Meghan by pursuing a game, and one that we have been unwilling to play from the start. We didn't want to play your silly game. Why are you forcing us to play? We didn't want to. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Harry continued. Unfortunately, my wife has become one of the latest victims of a British tabloid press that wages campaigns against individuals with no thought to the consequences. A ruthless campaign that's escalated over the past year, throughout her pregnancy and while raising our newborn son. There's a human cost to this relentless propaganda, specifically when it's knowingly false and malicious. And though we've continued to put on a brave face, as so many of you can relate to, I cannot begin to describe how painful it's been. Because in today's digital age, press fabrications are repurposed as truth across the globe. One day's coverage is no longer tomorrow's chip paper. Oh my gosh. I mean, I can see why the palace had their hands full with this one. He is just insistent upon going out and just blabbing. He has no care, concern whatsoever. He just wants to go out and have his peace. He has no self-restraint. It's completely and utterly a virtue that he has no interest in. Self-restraint. What? Clearly forgetting her trips during her pregnancy to New York and Morocco, Harry claimed that the media had created lie after lie at her expense because she hadn't been visible while on maternity leave. Why do they keep hammering on about that? Yeah, you were, though. You had a huge party in New York for no reason. Okay? If you were criticized, it's because you were doing things that were dumb. Right? And then, her trip to Morocco, this book didn't go into it, but, I hear that things went down there also. So, why does he come out and try to convince us of what we know not to be true? Does he think that just because he said it, these words falling out of his mouth, it's just like, magic? And suddenly my memory has been wiped clean. Oh, well, since Harry said it. Okay. I thought she went to New York and acted like a fool, but, Harry said she didn't, so I guess I must have just misremembered. While failing to identify the lies, he revealed their anguish. I've been a silent witness to her private sufferings for too long. To stand back and do nothing would be contrary to everything we believe in. There comes a point when the only thing to do is to stand up to this behavior because it destroys people and it destroys lives. Put simply, it's bullying, which scares and silences people.
And we all know that isn't acceptable.
Tell us something we don't know, Harry. I mean, does you just wonder, it's like, does he read these little speeches to Meghan in their bedroom? She's perched on the edge of the bed. Okay, Haz, go ahead. Let's hear it. And he reads his little speech, railing against bullies.
It's not acceptable.
That's right, H. That's right. That's exactly the energy we want. Now, at that last bit, I want you to really, pump your fist in the air against bullying. Okay, let's try that again.
All right, Meghan, all right. How's this? We all know it isn't acceptable.
How's that one? You like that? Haz, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the man that you're becoming. Finally, of course, in this long speech, he played the Diana card. Meghan, he said, was falling victim to the same powerful forces. It's like, you know what, Harry? That wouldn't have worked the first time. We all were looking at each other sideways the first time you said it. This is only like the 17 billionth time you've said it. Didn't work the first time. Do you think that, now that I've heard it 17 billion and one times, I get what you're saying now. Come on. He said that Meghan was falling victim to powerful forces. He said,
my deepest fear is history repeating itself. I've seen what happens when someone I love is treated as a commodity, to the point that they're no longer treated or seen as a real person. I lost my mother, and now I watch my wife falling victim to the same powerful forces.
Harry claimed that in publishing excerpts from Meghan's letter to her father, the Daily Mail on Sunday had misled readers by
strategically omitting select paragraphs, specific sentences, even singular words to mask the lies they had perpetrated for over a year.
Oh, God, the whining, I can't with it. It's too much. Every time he brings up his mother, it makes me feel like Harry has defined himself by the loss of his mother. Like, that's how he felt important in life.
I lost my mother at a young age. I had to walk behind the coffin.
This is all he ever talks about.
I was starting to lose my mental health because of my mother.
And the thing is that I am sorry he lost his mother. I'm not making light of the fact that was a very difficult loss. However, so did his brother lose his mother. And also, so do thousands and thousands and millions of people lose parents at young ages. And it's tragic every time. But Harry has learned to take that on as his identity. That's what makes him special. That's what makes him interesting. So as he's become older and older, and as he's become a man well advanced in his 30s, people are becoming less and less triggered emotionally to sympathy and empathy by that story, because it's like, well, that was really hard, but you've had quite a while to get past that, and your brother seems like he's doing okay. And it just kind of like, as he advances in age, it's like, but you're an adult now. So even if mommy hadn't died, you guys probably wouldn't be, joined at the hip, hopefully, But if he can't talk about it anymore, then he's losing what made him feel special. So to live in fear that Meghan is going to also meet the same fate, like, reinflates his ego and his ability to feel special again. Like, I can't really keep talking about my mom, but now I get to talk about my wife and how, she's the same thing and people are coming after her. And now he gets to talk about the same thing, but like in a new and more powerful light. And I just feel like, I wonder how much he actually was afraid and how much he created this idea of fear because he liked the narrative of having somebody to protect and made him feel like he was a man. It made him feel important and special. But also, having trauma and tragedy makes you interesting. And I don't feel like he necessarily ever felt like his personality was all that exciting. He talks about in Spare that he often felt with girls like he didn't have much to offer. And that when he felt like maybe one of the few reasons they came to him was because of who he is in the world. But, he wasn't super good with women, but this whole thing has made him interesting, and women have been sympathetic to it. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but I just think that his identity is so wrapped up in loss and trauma that he needs to create another one now that the mother trauma is starting to lose its punch. He would later assert about Diana,
my mother was chased to her death when she was in a relationship with someone who wasn't white, and now look what happened.
Referring to Meghan, he said,
they're not going to stop until she dies.
You guys, that's not me exaggerating. That is literally what he said in this statement.
They're not going to stop until she dies.
That's crazy behavior to let those words come out of your mouth? I mean, did nobody like read that back and be like, Your Royal Highness, could I just, just let me read this to you. Let me just see if you still hear it the way, is that what you meant to say? Do you want to maybe edit some of this? No. He wanted to say it. He loves the taste of those words in his mouth.
They're not going to stop until she dies.
He loves it. He forgot that Diana had actually fired her bodyguards that night, and that the only criticism of her relationship with Dodi Fayed was that the unemployed playboy was fond of drugs and had ordered a drunken driver to race through Paris. So people did take some, issue with him, but it wasn't because of the color of his skin. Shortly afterwards, in the midst of the tour, Schillings issued a high court claim on Meghan's behalf against the Mail on Sunday for publishing parts of her letter. Her resort to law was not unprecedented. Charles had sued some newspapers in 2006 for publishing his revelatory 1997 journal about a trip to Hong Kong. Despite the weakness of his case, the judge sided with Charles. British judges could be trusted to protect the royal family from embarrassment. In the claim, David Sherborne accused the Mail on Sunday of deliberately stirring up a dispute between Meghan and Thomas Markle as a part of an agenda. Her father, described as a vulnerable and fragile individual, had been, quote, exploited, harassed, and manipulated by the media. The claim also denied that People magazine had published any false or damaging information about Thomas Markle which demanded any response. Sherborne claimed that the newspaper's selection of quotations from Meghan's letter was dishonest and reeked of clear malicious intent and deceived and misled its readers. Okay, so David Sherborne's over there still working for them. And this statement is just ridiculous. You can't make these claims. It's like he didn't even read the article in People magazine. That article painted Thomas Markle as fat, sloppy, rude old man who had done nothing but reject Meghan's extension of love, on and on and on. He was cruel, he was unkind, he was unloving, and all she'd ever done was try to be a daughter to him. That was the picture that was painted. They acted like he just was so incredibly hateful. So of course Thomas wanted to come out and clear his name. That's all he's wanted to do this whole time. But David Sherborne would have been well advised to have read the article before he came out with this stupid statement, because all anybody has to do is see, okay, well, what did people say? You read it and you're like, okay, well, Thomas Markle had a right to defend himself, I don't know why they're shackling themselves to these unwinnable cases. Meanwhile, after Harry's ridiculous statement about how Meghan is being pursued, nobody cares about her, we all know bullying is wrong, and also my mom, people were just rolling their eyes. They could not even take it. Hysterical, ill-advised, hot-headed, self-indulgent, and over-emotional were a few of the newspaper's verdicts about Harry's statement and the High Court claim. Their South African state tour had ended in embarrassment. For the first time, some suggested the Sussexes ought to consider giving up their royal titles and become private citizens.